Yeah, they haven't come out yet, and this is a big quarter because there's been a lot of changes at the company. An ousted CEO, a stumbling Canadian expansion, and growing investor frustration with management pay. Okay, so they solved that one by booting out the CEO. They have an interim CEO right now, and of course, the effect of the data breach on sales, on sluggish sales overall. It's time for a company rebranding. So let's bring in Bill George. He teaches management practice at Harvard Business School. He is a former chairman of Medtronic's board. He has been named one of the top 25 business leaders of the past 25 years by PBS. Bill, thank you so much for joining us. When it comes to Target, it feels like the data breach that we heard about was kind of the last straw because Target's same-store sales had peaked in 2012. They dropped off. They turned south a couple of times. Is the problem at Target a vision problem or an execution problem at the top?
Well, Scarlett, I appreciate I wanted to say that I have full disclosure. I served on the Target board from '93 to 2005. I've not been in close touch with the company since then. But Target is an outstanding retailer. They're going through a very rough patch right now. I think the data breach was every CEO's worst nightmare, and I really empathize with Greg Steinapple. And surprisingly, they've gone through this tough period with a lot of negative publicity, tough problems in Canada, and the customers are staying with them. Bloomberg had a study out I saw on Monday, 2 days ago, that 84% of the customers said they're going to continue buying as they are. 7% said they're going to buy more, 7% less. So that's very surprising to me, particularly after a very rough winter. So Target has a great franchise. They're going through a rough patch. They're looking for a new CEO, but they have a very strong board. They've gone through a raid by JCPenney, a proxy fight with Bill Ackman, continuing competition from Walmart and Amazon. So it's a tough business, but I think they'll come back.
Barbara Corcoran shops there 4 times a week. Barbara, you got a thought on this to Bill
Not
George?
often enough. It's a great store, but I'm curious, why did the customers stay with them? Why would the customers put their credit card in there on the heels of that catastrophe and feel okay about shopping at Target? I think it's nothing short of a miracle.
I think so, too. And I know Greg and the board was committed to one thing, to not breach the trust of the customers.
But they
knew it was going to cost them a lot of money. They did. I know it unintentionally. But I'm saying after that, to protect the customers, to make sure they didn't have losses. And, yeah, it's a rough thing. I mean, I would scare the heck out of me.
Right.
But
Remarkable.
I think they said they keep the customers whole, and they keep going. And, yeah, they're going through a tough time, but they're looking for a new CEO, and I think they'll find an outstanding CEO. I feel very confident. This is a great job for any retail CEO.
Bill, let me switch gears here. Are you advising Credit Suisse on their executive leadership?
Not exactly. I'm on the board of Goldman Sachs, so I am not advising Credit Suisse. So they have a very difficult problem right now.
Well, what would be your advice now to them, and for that matter, to Mr. Dugan?
I do a top-to-bottom cleanup of the place because you got a criminal situation here. You got a huge fine. So I think they have to. Brady Dugan has to go top to bottom in the place and see everything they have to change from all their policies. Some of the other major banks have done that, and it's paid off well. And I think it's time to do that and decide, how are we going to do business in the global market? I think a lot of the banks are going through a reconsideration of that. This is a great bank, done a fantastic. I lived in Switzerland for a year and a half, Tom, but I think they have to look at all these global policies right now.
Very quickly, Bill George, how do you teach this at HBS? How do you teach intelligent corporate leadership?
I think the first thing you got to do is you got to be on the firing line. If you're a retailer, you got to be out on the floor. If you're a banker, you have to know every detail that's going on in your bank. I see a guy like Lloyd Blankfein at Goldman. He's on top of every detail, every risk. There's no way to do it. You can't preside anymore, Tom, like you could in the old days. You got to be really engaged.
All right. Thank you so much for your perspective. Bill George of Harvard Business School.